Hello folks, hope you're having a good day today. Today we're taking a look at the next Manly Wade Wellman story. In this, I had this collection of his stuff, which collects a lot of his best stuff as collected by himself and so forth. I've linked you to this before. I just read actually the fourth story in here, which we're going to be looking at, which is Come Into My Harbor. It was published in '49 and so forth. He wrote it in the late 40s. It's about 15-20 years into his, well, it's more about 20 years now, into his writing journey that started in the mid-20s. Manly Wade Wellman, as I've told you before, is this guy who has this giant life. It's mythic-sized life. Born in Africa, partly Native American, traveled in Europe, was a star athlete, got a scholarship, graduated from an Ivy League law school, studied folklore, and so forth. So he's well-traveled and researched. He's smart. He's, an athlete. He is just like he is just so much bigger than life, right? And so forth. And so anyway, that's Manly Wade Wellman for you. He's also an incredibly gifted writer. Some of his stories are much better written than some of the other stories you read from pulp writers. But unfortunately, he's just not somebody who has transferred his fame and renown to us today, which is a sad thing because he's definitely a gifted writer. He's better as a writer than many of the people I've reviewed for you, like John Blair's or something like that. He's also mentioned, by the way, in Appendix N by Gygax as a big influence on Dungeons & Dragons. So you may come to him today, and his name today, basically through two routes. One of those is either through Gary Gygax's in his Appendix N in Dungeons & Dragons and his influence on that, or because he wrote some stuff in the Cthulhu mythos, and he was a big writer for Weird Tales. So if you come to him from the Weird Tales side of things, you may have heard about him from that side too. That's actually where I came into, where I heard from him first. And I actually read some Cthulhu stuff that he'd written, and the Cthulhu mythos, like the Terrible Parchment and so forth, which he wrote right after Lovecraft died as an homage to him, and then and so forth. And that's where I started for reading him too. And he was, a talented writer then, even when he's writing something like that. So, you can tell a guy has a strong talent for writing. So, let's take a look at Come Into My Parlor, which is the fourth story we've reviewed for you from Manly Wade Wellman. Come Into My Parlor is interesting because it has this strong feel to it. Like a lot of his stories, it's set in the Carolina mountains and so forth. He tried to travel the Appalachian mountains, brought in a lot of their sort of short stories and so forth, and this is set in one of the swamps in the Carolina mountains and so forth, where you have a number of pitcher plants, sundews, and so forth. It actually reminds me a little bit of Cranberry Glades in my home state of West Virginia, and his description of this area and so forth. And Cranberry Glades is very different than the rest of West Virginia. It's this big giant bog area that's, and West Virginia is the only state that's fully in the Appalachian Mountains. So I get this, and so forth. And his descriptions, I've probably spent like at least a day just exploring the glades, and his descriptions, and I've been there many times. His descriptions of the areas that this guy's in, and his explorations and so forth, definitely lined up with the Cranberry Glades, and they're both in Appalachia. So if you're thinking, hey, you're not swamps in Appalachia, there are swamps in Appalachia. They're just not all over the place as much as you may think. But anyway, be that neither here nor there, but again, that's there for you. And they both have these, sort of carnivorous plants that are, commonly studied. And this person's basically a botanist who's there to explore these two big sundews and the pitcher plants and so forth. So he's studying them. He wants to put together an experiment where he has a number of different types of meats that he's going to feed them, an experiment with them. He's going to have like maybe pork meat, lamb meat, and so forth. He's going to see what happens if he has, them, he's got three different ones, a sample size that he's not going to add anything to, one that he adds a small amount to, and one that he adds a large amount to. So he's got these, and he'll have multiples of them, and then he expects to publish his work. So that's basically what he's going to be doing while he's here. You're going to meet Henry, who is his local gardener, who does a lot of the gardening for him and so forth. And Henry doesn't like man-eating plants. He likes plants that man eats, not plants that eat man, or eat. He wants plants that you eat, not plants that eat you. Basically, I'll tell you that right up front, like the first paragraph of the story. And he is basically this local person who's a little older, a little wiser in the local area and so forth. And he's basically going to tell our main character to stay away from a certain swamp that's nearby called the Gardinel swamp. And he says, the Gardinel swamp is dangerous because it has these Gardinels in it. And then the guy's like, so what are Gardinels and so forth? And he tells him, you're not going to believe me. And if I told you, one of either two things would happen. Either you would completely disbelieve me altogether and you'd go there anyway, or you'd believe me and in your obsession, you'd go there. So I'm not going to tell you either way because I know that you're going to get in danger one way or the other if I were to tell you what a Gardinel was. And so forth. And there's this interesting line that this local older gardener tells our point of view character. His name's Henry. No, I'm sorry, Henry's the name of the gardener. Anyway, but Henry tells the guy's not his owner, but his supervisor, his employer, and his boss. Anyway, there's this interesting line that he tells him where he basically is talking about the swamp and so forth, and what's happening in the Gardinels and so forth. And it's really, there's some pretty interesting lines and characterizations that you're going to get early on in this story that are particularly good. He also has one where he tells it's about the rain, but our point of view character doesn't believe him because it's like completely and totally sunny out and so forth. But anyway, he heads out, goes to the nearby swamp. He's following along some pitcher plants and some other things too. And of course it rains and he gets caught out, so he starts to seek for shelter. He's going to find a stranger's hut. He's going to head on in. And the stranger's not home, so he's going to head on in, even though, it's not his house, but, it's drenching rain out, driving a downpour and so forth, so he seeks a shelter and so forth in the rain. He figures that since the owner's not there, he figures that the owner of this hut's not going to mind. And of course, he's going to meet the Gardinel. You're going to find out what the Gardinel is. It's incredibly clever and so forth, and then you'll see what happens. So I'm going to stop it there. So it's about halfway through the story and so forth. I hope, but hopefully that'll get you interested in it. But again, if you're like, I don't see how are swamps in Appalachia. Trust me, there are swamps in Appalachia. Cranberry Glades is a good example thereof. But anyway, there you are. I'll link you to it below. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you've read it or something, if you agree with me or disagree with me about the story, you may not think it's as strong as I do, or maybe you think it's better than I do. Maybe you think this is Manly Wade Wellman at his best. I think the best story I've read by him so far is Frogfather. But I'd be, persuadable on this or some other stuff that he's read. So I'm persuadable, I think. Anyway, feel free to let me know what you think about it in the comments below. But I'll go ahead and pause it, stop it there. Hey, if you enjoyed this, there's no reason not to hit that subscribe button because we're going to have so many more of these classics to follow. I'm trying to unpack a lot of sort of people, famous writers like Manly Wade Wellman that you've never heard of before, or that you should have heard of. And should have been reading about, and stuff like this. So I'm trying to unlock a lot of these sort of hidden treasures and stuff from these great classic writers from the past and so forth for you as a part of this series. Also, hey, if you enjoyed this, and I want to thank you for watching this video all the way to the end because we all have such busy days and busy lives. So the fact that you spent this time with me, man, that's something that's really humbling, and I appreciate that. So thanks for your time.